Good job today, man. One at a time, and we'll get the job done. Y'all know what to say. On three. 1, 2, 3.
And the home of the Jets.
What is going on, everybody? Friday night, a little Jets preview with the Bills. It should have been Wednesday night, but my schedule sucks, and Kevin is so nice to be flexible with me. Kevin, how you doing, man?
Living the dream, Ty. Great to be here. Love it. Love talking. It's what a matchup. We got a little taste of stuff yesterday. More than ever, man. The AFC is tweeted it yesterday is wide open. So
yes, sir.
I think it's a great time to be here.
So, for those of you who don't know you, Cover One Bills host, and you're a media personality, according to Twitter. Like, how do I become a media personality, man? That's some prominent stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it. I think it's just a matter of getting that blue check and getting some of that internet money. But more or less, man, it's been a ride. It's definitely been a ride for Bills fans this offseason. So it's definitely always great to connect with you. As always, you were on our show on Tuesday. So it was fun. That was obviously a fun edition as well.
No, I love talking Jets Bills with you guys. I like talking football with you guys. You'll do a really good job, and you're not biased, man. You give honest answers. If your team sucks, you say it. If you're good, you say it. For the last couple of years, I've been going on your show and just eating my words. I'm like, we suck. I know it. You guys just smack us around. So we'll start with this, just as a high-level question. Just what were your thoughts when the Jets initially traded for Aaron Rodgers? Were you like, wow, were you like, that's a power move? Or were you not that concerned? Like, what did you think when that whole move happened?
I think so. Here's my opinion on it. So like 12 months ago, I would have said, geez, that is an absolute power move. I think like the season he had mixed with like, it wasn't even just a New York thing. It was like, there was a couple other teams rumbled and, the whole, like, let me figure things out if I want to retire. I think that took a little bit of luster out of it for unbiased, like people who don't, weren't like totally following the entire story. But he's Aaron Rodgers. Like, it comes down to it. If he shows that he can do anything near what he was able to do a few years ago, like that's a power move. Yep. So it's very interesting. Of course you would prefer him not go to your division on any team. Like, It doesn't matter. Like, I think there was rumblings that could he go to New England? Could he go to even Miami at one point? Like, was Tua going to go back for it? Like, what was going to happen? So I think ideally Bills fans in perspective would tell you, I don't really want him in our division because he can be so good. If he's a guy he is at 39, 40, it's not going to be fun. So I think it remains to be seen, but I think originally just a little bit of that luster was taken out of it, but ultimately would have preferred him be in the NFC somewhere.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, going to the 49ers, I guess you guys like let him go there or something.
Right.
Now, did you... And we'll go into a lot of Bills stuff now because like, most of our viewers know the Jets inside out and backwards. Right. So we want to get your Bills take. But what is your take on the Jets roster as a whole, though? Do you see them like obviously last year we beat you guys with Zach Wilson, but Josh Allen was banged up. Do you see the Jets as a team on the rise, like a good mix of young and like I'm always curious to see what you guys think of us because we admire how you guys built your team up. Like when I used to talk to you about it, I'm like, man, you guys built the right way. You built through the draft. You got the quarterback. How do you see the Jets?
Yeah, I think you guys nailed the draft out of the park last year, and I think that was scary for the rest of the conference. I mean, look, we'll talk about just the division. From our perspective, it was not great to have both, rookies of the year on both sides of the ball because that's how you build a team ultimately. Yes, trading for Rodgers is a big play here, but that's ultimately how you build a team and how the Bills got successful. They found their quarterback. They drafted many solid pieces along the way. We had a chart that came out at Cover One. I think Bean is ranked number 2 or 3 in the league in productivity from the draft.
Wow.
So I think that's just generally the way you build, and you guys did that. So then that afforded you the responsibility and the ability to go out and trade for a quarterback. Had you not done that, I don't know what position you'd be in. So I think the scarier move than even the Rodgers is, your landing of your draft class last year, I think would probably scare more Bills fans, myself included, just off the bat. Because, I mean, look, I don't know what the problem was with Sauce. I would have taken him first or second. I'd have to go through it in my head exactly, but I don't think he should have made it out of the top 3. So, I mean, I know the Cincinnati, the small school thing, but that was weird. Other than that, like Garrett Wilson's a great player too. I mean, that was the one pick when I was like, that is not where I wanted him to go. So ultimately I think the draft landed well. You got great value in those trades, man. I think that's ultimately what started this whole thing. Like, I mean, Jamal Adams, I mean, you guys really, you really won on that front. You gotta make the picks, but you guys won. All the way around. So, to the point where I don't even know where, I mean, is Jamal Adams even playing?
He's not even playing week 1 right now, I don't think.
I mean,
the last thing I saw.
I saw that and I'm like,
yeah.
Whew, what a win. What a win. So I think those are the things, like, from a Bills perspective, we don't want to see you succeed like that. I mean, those are some major pairings between the trade and then the drafting of the assets. You mess up one place or the other, but so to see the Jets hit both of those, I think that's the scary thing with the roster build. So we just want to see if that defense is for real again. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. If it is, yikes. I think that's definitely a big challenge. We want to see them back that up, in back-to-back years. There's every signs are pointing to that. But we'll have to see it, after 6 weeks. And I think I've said this, Ty, like, I don't think week 1 will tell us either way. If the Jets come out flat, I don't think that says that their season's done. They're not as good as the Bills. They're not as competitive. Like, I don't think we got to scale up just with like the Chiefs. Like, we have to scale back. Like,
the week 1 overreactions are wild, man. Now the Lions are the best team in the NFC. It's like, what are we doing? It's like, and that's one thing. I'm looking forward to the matchup. It's a great matchup, but I'm like, I'm not going to overact either way. It'd be a great win. It could be a tough loss, but it's still 17 games, no matter how you look at it. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. We learned that last year. Now, one of the big stories, one of my really, really good friends, the Bills fan, we text each other all day long, every day for years. And the Stefan Diggs thing was really interesting to me because the playoff loss last year was brutal to the Bengals at home in the snow, which is a game you think you're going to win. But the way Diggs handled himself was kind of like, wow, man, like, you got it made in Buffalo. You're a superstar receiver. You get fed the ball. You seem like you're a leader. You embrace the community. And then this offseason was all that drama where he seemed like he was unhappy. Then he was happy. Then Josh Allen has to answer questions about it, which had to be annoying. What was your take on the whole Diggs thing?
Weird. Like, I think that, I mean, there's definitely some, okay, so the Diggs thing, we believe, truthfully, if you want some inside info and, we know players, we think it's a personality thing off the field, personally. Like, there's no rumblings of any, he gets targets. He's never not been included in a game plan. I mean, he's had as many successes he has his entire time here. Yes, they did lay an egg in Cincinnati. You look at that roster, the Jets roster was probably better than the Bills trotted out. Besides Josh Allen, it was bad. Like, the defensive roster they put out against the Bengals, I mean, it was atrocious. Like, there was very limited chance they were going to be able to stop a powerful team, Burrow, Mahomes, whoever it may have been in that game. They lost Daquan Jones right before the game. There goes our run defense. It was a mess. They did okay defensively. That actually stretches where they performed, but the offensive line was so poor. We say this, Dorsey didn't put together a good enough game plan in the snow. We joke about it. We really think I was tailgating at the game. It was beautiful out. It was like 30 and sunny. Within an hour, torrential snow and 25. And it was just, we don't believe, I mean, their game plan was just not consistent to what it was against Miami in the snow. It was just completely different. And so we think that there's a little discontent there with Diggs and that game plan, specifically that one game, because he's Allen's, I mean, it's Allen handpicked him. Let's call it what it is. Allen stole him from the Giants. Brian Dable wanted to bring him over instead of Mike Kafka. And, Allen's like, no, we're not going to let him leave too. And, obviously Bean and McDermott obliged to their franchise quarterback. And he had a pretty good season. DVOA gave the Bills the second best offense in the league. Is actually better than Dable's offense in a lot of ways. And they're the number one DVOA team, one of the best teams ever tracked last year, which is funny considering like how we left this season. So ultimately the Diggs drama was weird. There was definitely some personality problems there. But on the field, there was no issues. It's no different than, we kind of get upset when that was more talked about than, let's say, like Chris Jones, who's actually missing games.
Yep.
He's not on the field for his team, and the team just lost. So ultimately, to us, that was a big story. And there have been other player examples across the league where people love to see that these receivers, they love to see these receivers have issues. But there really wasn't a major one. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's Chris Jones. Like, he's a great player, one of the best defensive players in the league, but just didn't draw like continuing to make this drama about Diggs. And then you have like Stephen A. Smith, and you have just other players, or excuse me, other media members just coming up with some outlandish stuff like Diggs doesn't like the strip clubs, and just all types of different comments that just aren't.
Well, that's sports media now, man.
Yeah,
that's sports media. You look at now, like all the reactions to Hard Knocks, like the Jets this whole offseason, like you love them or hate them, but the takes out there are just dreadful. Like there's times now where I'm like, you know what? I'm done with social media for today because this is just some nonsense at this point. It's like everybody's desperate for views and clicks and likes and subscribers and everything else. Now, the interesting thing was Leslie Frazier leaving. Now, to me, from what I've seen, a lot of Bill fans were happy about that.
Yeah.
But that's also more responsibility for Sean McDermott. Are you concerned about him having that extra responsibility? And were you happy that Frazier left?
I think I am happy because ultimately Bean gave the power to McDermott to make the decision. And then McDermott from there is known to not be a micromanager to a fault at times, where he's letting his positional coaches say, like, I don't like Kyer Elam. I don't really like this player. And there's no overruling by Bean or McDermott to say, nah, like, he's more talented. Let's play him. So I think at times Leslie Frazier took this Tampa 2, this cover 2 shell that he'd run, and was just very vanilla with it and would make teams make mistakes. And they would occasionally, and quite frequently they would. I mean, the Bills DVOA, once again, I don't try to bring it up a lot, but Bills DVOA on defense was very high too. Like, they were one of the best defenses in the league. So it's interesting to me because I'm not a huge Leslie Frazier fan. I thought he was passive, especially with the limited weapons. What I really like what Miami did to the Bills in the playoffs last year, where they just sent 0 blitzes. They just said, we're not as good. We're sending everybody. I like that move because ultimately it kept them in the game, honestly. And I wish the Bills would have been more aggressive with the Bengals, knowing their defensive roster wasn't, Porter was out by the time the second quarter rolled around. Micah Hyde's obviously out, no Von Miller, no Daquan Jones. Trey White's coming back to speed. Their corners was a mess. No Benford. It was a mess. They didn't really have their defensive roster playing at all. So I wish that, Leslie Frazier would have done more to help out his team in that game. And then the checks got complicated. The Bills went in. I was told by a Bills defender, they went in with like 20 checks at the line of scrimmage defensively, which is like triple what they normally bring into, let's say, a normal regular season game. So it was kind of a bizarre finish to the season. I don't believe that it's going. I think it's going to bring McDermott back to his roots of what he's really good at.
Yep.
And I think ultimately, most Bills fans are intrigued by what they saw in the preseason in terms of it being more aggressive, them sending more defensive back blitzes. They went with a younger, faster, more athletic style of linebacker. So Bills fans are very interested to see what this can bring. And, quite frankly, their defensive line's going to be really good as well. So, I mean, I think it's going to be a really good game where this game could turn more defensive than we originally might think on Monday. So ultimately, to answer your question, I think Bills fans would become are very happy that he's taking over. And if he doesn't get it done, then it's on him.
Yeah.
So there's no more excuses. There's no more issues. There's no more collapsing, 80, 90 points in the playoffs over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Like, this is done. Like, it's McDermott's defense. Someone else can be there for him if he needs help with game management in terms of timeout usage or something. But ultimately, we need this defense to clean up in games against like the Jets and way down the line when things get really tight.
Okay, so we'll start with the defensive side of the ball, where the Bills are known for the defense. The defensive front is sick. Even with Von Miller out, they're still a very formidable group. You got Leonard Floyd. But the one thing everybody keeps talking about is your middle linebacker, where, it seems like the concern for you, or for like every Bills fan I've talked to. Like, our front's good, but the linebacker kind of scares me a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's kind of like the unknown of the Jets offense in a way of like the Bills really like what they're going to be. Toward the end of the season, this goes back to how the season ended. Tremaine Edmonds is an absolute beast in zone coverage. Like, he covers zones.
Yep.
He got paid accordingly. No other linebacker really got paid. Really just him and like Jesse Bates. There wasn't really that many big back 7 kind of safeties or linebackers that were getting paid a ton of money. And he was one of them just because of how he can take away zones, how he can read and react. But really where he struggled, Ty, was he could not cover anybody out of the backfield. terrible at it. To the point where we can't pay $18 to $20 million for a guy who can't cover running back out of the backfield. He can cover zone. He can go into his cover 2 zones. He can go into his quarters coverage. He can do whatever it takes to be successful, but he couldn't cover. He could cover receivers better than he could running backs out of the backfield. He would just get toasted. So to the point where Bean actually came out and said, like, look, it wasn't in our plans to continue to get beat man to man. So we're going to go with a faster, quicker, more athletic 4-4 guy. And that's where they went with Terrell Bernard. It was always his job from the start. So I think that Bills fans are a little bit like, why did Terrell Dodson play all preseason? It was only because he got a minor hamstring injury early, like right at the end of our training camp. And we just had to see Terrell Dodson through 3 training camp games or through 3 preseason games. And that wasn't fun. I borderline don't think he would have made the roster. So I think Bills fans started getting nervous about like, this isn't the guy we're going to trot out, is it? And ultimately Terrell Bernard's their 3rd round pick from last year. He got like a 9 RAS. He was one of the best blitzers. He led a really good Baylor defense. And I think we're going to see on Monday real quickly how he can, get up to speed and if he can handle these running backs out of the backfield, how he's going to do against tight ends. And more importantly, I think the Bills are going to send him a lot more than they would have Tremaine Edmonds.
Yeah, and I think the way each team attacks each other is going to be somewhat similar, where it's like the Jet defensive front's going to cut after it. So you almost like dink and dunk a little bit, running backs out of backfield, hit the tight end over the middle. You know what I mean? Try so you can open up, try to run the football. So when you look at the Bills defense against the Jets offense, and the offensive line for the Jets is a work in progress, man. Becton hasn't played in 2 years, and he's actually sick right now, which is scary. Dwayne Brown coming back from injury, didn't play his preseason. Like, there's a lot of moving parts here. What would be your game plan to attack Aaron Rodgers in this offense?
I think we can't let Aaron Rodgers he gets the ball extremely quickly. So we need to make sure that we're filling up zones. We're filling up quick things over the middle, maybe bait him to throw deep. And if he can do it, then you have to adjust. If he can beat you over the top, the Bills will generally go into a cover 2 shell like they do against, Mahomes or Burrow. They did it against Rodgers. And to the point where the Green Bay game plan basically said to run the ball. And the Bills said, fine, like our offense is good enough. We're destroying your defense. Please run the ball. We don't mind in this situation, to the point where the famous Von Miller goes up to Aaron and says, like, are you literally letting your team run the ball out of run yourself into a loss? Like it was a pretty famous, quote by Von to Aaron. And Aaron, Aaron really didn't say anything, but still it was like, he kind of giggled, but still it was truthful to the point where it was like, guys, you guys are down like 20, like, we don't mind you running the ball on us. So will they go into that kind of cover 2 shell? That's what's going to be interesting. I personally think that the way to attack them is attack that offensive line, put pressure on the tackles. The Bills defensive ends have been really, really good this offseason as well. So I think you're going to see that. And more importantly, their interior defensive line is what is heavily improved too, in terms of getting Poona Ford in there, a guy that the Bills fans are really excited to see. And then the continued growth of Ed Oliver too has been great, and he earned the contract himself as well. So
you got Rousseau.
Bills are really excited about the D-line, to be honest, and we want to put pressure on Aaron. Like, there's no way we're going to let him sit back there and throw. So if he beats us going deep somehow, that's what it is. But we're going to want him to take those checks, and that's why we went with quicker, faster coverage linebackers instead of more of those physical specimens in zone coverage like Tremaine Edmonds was.
Now, what do you think about? To me, I think the Jets are going to feed Garrett Wilson. To be honest with you, I think Rodgers has instant chemistry with him. You saw him with Devontae Adams and the Packers, where the ball's going there. He's still going to throw it anyway. He's going to challenge him. How do you like your matchups with Garrett Wilson?
It's going to be an interesting one, because I think it's going to be the old Belichick philosophy of maybe shadowing him all game with one of their high-end safeties and mix it up with like Christian Benford. Christian Benford's a really great coverage corner, and I think that's what you'll see. He proved it to us with staying sticky to DJ Moore all preseason. That was really, really cool to see him stay pound for pound with him and really be a competitor. And then we're going to give him some safety help, obviously. So I think that's the plan with it. Like, I don't think we're going to let him beat us. We're going to say, if Allen Lazard can go out there and beat Trey White, that's fine. That's how they're going to go down. So I think that's ideally the situation where you'll probably see a lot of Trey White, and it's kind of the Belichick philosophy, your corner 1 on receiver 2. So I think you're going to see the philosophy of Trey White versus Garrett Wilson versus Allen Lazard, and then maybe Christian Benford with safety over Garrett Wilson, and see which way Aaron goes with it. And if the Bills have to make a defensive adjustment, they will. But that's kind of how I plan on it, rather than say like Trey White following Garrett Wilson around. I don't see that at this stage. Maybe they'll go to that, but I don't anticipate seeing that if at all on Monday.
Yeah, now going on the other side of the ball where the Jets defense, I know, is highly hyped up. I mean, they've got a lot of talent, a lot of energy, a lot of guys on the rise, which is super exciting. Attacking your offense. Now, the questions I had for you is your offensive line. You mentioned earlier, last year struggled towards the end. You have Deion Dawkins, you have Spencer Brown, where depending on who you talk, some people are concerned, some people feel a little better about it. What is your level of confidence in the offensive line?
Now flip it to the Bills offensive line. And I think this is one area that's not talked about enough for the Bills. They sank all their assets that they had into the offensive line. They did not get sheepish. And one thing I know Spencer Brown personally, he shouldn't have been playing in the football season last year. He's playing with numb legs and it needed an epidural to suit up every week. It was one of those situations to where the Bills basically said, if you can gut it through, it's going to still be your job next season. They lived up to those words. And they love what they saw from Spencer and his raw athleticism and ability. He's got a 10 RAS score. He's, just utterly can pound speed, can pound power rushers. He's really good in power and he's really good in the run game. So the Bills really are working at the speed game though with him in terms of making sure that he's not losing to speed rushers, but really does have the other parts of his game down. And I think that there's talks that like he's the weak link. And he's been really good this preseason. So I think that that's been good to see. And the biggest problem for him was that he was suiting up all the time near rotational guard all season. And between his injury and him playing, with, two guards that are now benched, one's not even on the roster in Rodgers Saffold, and another, power run game guard. That didn't really mixed with the philosophy of Aaron Kromer's and Ken Dorsey's pass style. So it was an issue that why would we even sign him then? That was kind of a big problem. But they went out and got the best pass blocking guard they could find in the other Connor McGovern, who from the Cowboys, who they were sad to lose because he had really picked it up for Dak Prescott late in the season. Kind of reverse to where you put on the film against the 49ers and Connor McGovern was the best player on their offensive line. Bills went out and noticed that in the big moments and said, okay, he's going to be our left guard. And then we're going to go out and do anything we can to get to play with this interior line unit of the draft. They picked Osiris Torrance, been a starting at right guard ever since. So the Bills are very lucky he fell to them in the second round. That's usually that doesn't happen for the Bills. Usually they're taking a third defensive end or, Boogie Basham or something like that. They got lucky for once, and don't know why the league would have passed on a pure stud right guard. I think it's only because he only plays right guard. He really can't go to tackle, not really a center, only a right guard, seriously. So I think that made him fall a little bit. But ultimately, like we wanted him in the first round. We were like, we need to entrench a guard. We struggled so bad up the middle last year. Josh Allen had to scramble every time because the pressure was on the middle, thus making Spencer Brown worse. So ultimately, you have two upgrades at guard. You have, a healthy Spencer Brown. You have a healthy Deion Dawkins, and Mitch Morse is a stud to our offensive lineman, regardless of whatever scores and grades he gets on PFF. So ultimately, the Bills feel like they're in a really good spot with those five offensive linemen, and they played very well in the preseason. Yes, two of the three games are against the Colts and the Bears, but ultimately they played really well. So I think that. And then Aaron Kromer offensive lines are always better in their second year, and he's their second year here. So Bills are we're feeling pretty good about our offensive line to the point where that's why we're going to run a ton of 12 personnel on Monday.
And that's a perfect segue to my next question, whereas Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, if the Bills do that is the perfect formula to attack the Jet defense because they've notoriously struggled getting running backs out of backfield and covering tight ends. They have Quincy Williams. They have Jamie Sherwood this year, who's supposed to be a little better. I wish they brought Quan back. They didn't. They have Sherwood. I think the Jets probably do a lot of three safety. They'll have a safety come down, whether it's Amos or whoever else it is. But, I mean, it seems to me like you're going to feature tight ends a lot, man. That's like an instant mismatch because Kincaid's a beast.
They needed to correct the offensive line, and the Bills really did. So there's still a lot of misconception. I promise you one of the takes I'll go down by is the Bills' offensive line is drastically improved. It was so bad up the middle. Like, I can't speak to it enough. The tackles didn't have a chance last year, who are pretty good. So Spencer Brown took a lot of the heat. But ultimately, like up the middle, they were so poor. Like, Quinnen Williams, it would be just a complete and utter mismatch. Not that I'm saying, he's one of the best to do it, but, they will still dominate now against lesser defensive tackles. So it's really good to get a test in early against, one of the best defensive tackles in the league. They play a ton of them. Look at our division. You have Christian Wilkins. And then, we're always playing the Chiefs and when Chris Jones comes back. So we have to worry about a lot of these defensive tackles. So the 12 personnel set is going to be huge for us. It's going to alleviate some of the pressure that's on Spencer Brown. And they went out and They always wanted that tight end. And a good point. Dawson Knox is the Bills' number one tight end. He's really good. So I think that's always confused. He's a really good blocker. He's developed into a really good blocker. The Bills can do a lot of different things with Dawson Knox. So they're going to trot out a lot of packages that have Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid in them, and you're not really sure how they're going to form what formation they're going to go into. Is it Brandon Beane calls it 11.5 personnel because you don't know if you're going to see Dalton Kincaid line up in line or if you're going to see him take slot snaps like Mike Gesicki. So you're not really sure exactly how it's going to go. And he proved as much to really cook linebackers in this preseason. Now, what will he do against starters at the highest level? We have to see on Monday. But he is a huge mismatch for an average to below average linebacker. That'll be definitely a focal point of the Bills, just season in general, not just the Jets, the season in general, to get him against bad linebackers. And then are you going to put a 5'9" corner on him? I mean, it's going to be a tough decision to make that one too, because he's a great contested catch guy. Even if you're sticky coverage on him, the number one reason they drafted him was the thing we saw last night with KC, his hands are elite. So you're not going to see those errors early and often. So then you're going to bring in, they also brought in Trent Sherfield, a guy they really like the signing of, one of the best blocking receivers in the league. So you're going to see him in 12 personnel sets. The Bills are going to be able to do anything they want out of that with like Diggs and Sherfield, and then have Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox in there. And it's a pretty good package. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays together for the Bills. And then obviously the biggest change, James Cook is their just number one starting running back. He was much better than Devin Singletary. He's going to get all the carry. So it's really great to see like a running back one in Buffalo for once. And he's the guy. Like ultimately, he's the guy. Yep. At times we were linked to Dalvin at points this offseason too. The whole AFC East was. Basically the comment that came out of it was James is the number one running back. Like Dalvin himself even said, like, I don't want to take a single carry from my brother. Yeah, of course. So I think that's pretty cool. So you're going to see a lot of James Cook, and he was great this preseason. So we're excited for the offense, just kind of like you guys are probably pretty excited to see your defense in action. And look, Josh Allen admits himself he struggled against this Jets defense. He was awful. Like we'll call it what it was. His worst game of the year was the second game. Doesn't really matter. It was a really weird game. There was sleet. Like White was broken in half. It was. I was there. It was like you couldn't even see the field. There was that chunky rain snow. Yep. There just wasn't offense. So we're just gonna put that game we really can't take a ton from. It was weird. The first game though, he was just awful. Like he didn't play good. He didn't see his reads. He missed coverages. You don't see that from Josh very much, especially last year. He was actually really good last year. So the Jets got him. So I think that the one thing that he likes to do is likes to then show that he can be better than that. So we've seen it against Bill Belichick when he has a bad game against New England. Yep. We've seen it against KC if he plays them poorly. He's been actually really good against KC in his career. But we'll see this game as I think he has as much to prove as anybody. And that's when you get the best Josh. It's the unmotivated Josh going into MetLife with nothing on the line, thinking he's better than the Jets. That's when you don't get good Josh. He lost to the Jags in a similar situation. He's known to do that at 1:00 on Sundays occasionally, but primetime Josh, knowing how big this game is, knowing how good the Jets could be, this is when you'll get good Josh.
No, and the question I have for you is, like, last year was kind of a disappointing ending for him. He was banged up and all kinds of stuff. He took a beating at times too. Now, do you think he's facing a lot of pressure this year where, like, the Bills, everybody expects you guys to win the AFC East, make a run, and it's not like right now the Jets are saying, no, we want to win the East. We want to make a run in the playoffs. For the Bills, you guys talk Super Bowl, man. That's usually the expectation when you have a very good team and a quarterback like Josh. Do you think he's under any pressure? Does he get any scrutiny right now, or is he still kind of everybody's guy?
No, zero pressure on Josh Allen. The coaching staff will probably feel it first. But there's zero pressure on Josh. No one thinks that any issues, majority, maybe beside individual plays, is Josh's fault. That Jets game was Josh was awful. He didn't play very good. That was his fault. He didn't look good at all. I mean, I think there was some good scheme in that game. I went back and watched it. I thought the dime to Gabe Davis at the end of the game was his best play. That was post injury, and Gabe Davis should have made that play. Period. Yeah. Other than that, though, he didn't play very good. And I think that beside a couple of those moments, and you guys have seen some of them, it's not frequent. It's not something that we see from Josh, and Bills fans there's very few Bills fans who put pressure on Josh. He'd have to look terrible over the first 8 weeks or something to the point where it doesn't look like he's in it. And unless that rare scenario happens, there's no situation to where he's under any pressure. Even though it's a good question, because Look at Mahomes. Like, he wasn't able to overcome it yesterday, but he has been able to overcome an ankle injury. He's been able to, he has a good offensive line, but he's been able to come over bad weapons. His offensive coordinator left this year, so we'll see if he's able to overcome that. He's able to overcome pretty much anything thrown at him, and Josh is kind of up there with him. So at some point, he has to prove that, like, he can too. Like, even with injury, that he, generally is pretty healthy, but knock on wood, he's got to prove that he can overcome that too, Ty. And quite right now, he hasn't proven that he can overcome it, even though 13 seconds would tell you he was dynamic and they should have won the Super Bowl that year.
Yeah.
So, Bills fans will point to that and say he has overcome, even Patrick Mahomes. His numbers are just as good in big time games. Yep. The Jets are big time now. So you guys are now classified in a big time game.
Well,
and that's when you see big time Josh. And unfortunately, he can disappear at moments on a 1 o'clock game. He just does. And he's done it throughout his career. But when the lights are on and he knows people are talking about the game and he's the only game on, he's 11-3. His interception to touchdown ratio is like 3 times what it normally is. So we'll see. We'll see what thing holds true. The struggle against the Jets defense or primetime Josh. We'll see or a mixture of maybe somewhere in the middle. But we'll see which one shines through on Monday. But this is a primetime game. It's a big game. Everyone's talking about the Jets. I think ESPN or NFL all pick the Jets. I forget which one.
I think not looking.
Josh will see that.
Well, and I think the Jets too are taking the approach where it's us against the world, where everybody wants to hate on them and say, you know what, you got. Now the thing is, you got to prove it on the field. Well, you can't prove till the game start. Like, it's been preseason. They can't prove nothing in the preseason. Now, give me one player on each side of the ball that could surprise us. A name that nobody's really talking about that can surprise us on offense and defense Monday night.
Yeah, I think they've kind of both come up a little bit here in our conversation, but on defense, I'll start first there, and it's Christian Benford. He's a guy that's always been good, and like most people will think of that as like 6th-round pick, kind of default corner. The Bills can diagnose and they can recommend really good corners. That is not somewhere the Bills struggle. They will never struggle in the DBs. They have 2 all-pro safeties that they've handpicked. They've developed Trey White. The infamous trade back to take Trey White trade that turned into Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs. But the Bills came out with Trey White and Josh Allen, so they feel okay too. So the infamous like DBs, and then they've been able to develop these guys in a pretty successful manner. So I'd watch Christian Benford, and I'm interested to see, like I mentioned earlier in a segment, will he be on Garrett Wilson? Because I seem to think so. And he's that sticky corner the Bills have been missing for many. And Trey White's a great zone corner. He's elite. But isn't quite that track and follow corner kind of player. So that's what Bills fans have been missing. And that's why Christian Benford won the job, and he gets down and dirty. Something that Kyer Elam lost a job to Christian Benford because he just didn't get down and dirty. Yeah. Christian Benford is really good in corner support and in run support and backer force coming in and trying to make a run stop. He's really good at that. And that's what they're predicting the need to stop, whether it's Breece Hall or Delvin Cook. So I think that's ultimately he's going to have his crack at this job because of his ability in run support and to stay sticky with a receiver. So he's somebody to watch for in this game because I think you'll see early on if he's overmatched, but at the same time, he has shown to the Bills coaching staff that is really good at diagnosing corners that he's able to do it. And they've used him, and when they lost him down the stretch, they felt it. And it's funny to say from a 6th-round rookie, they were a worse team when he was off the field. And he had a few banged up injuries. He did not play much toward the end of the season. So it's going to be a big difference to have him and Trey White on the field. The Bills feel like they have their full strength secondary for the first time in years. So that's somebody to watch on defense. On offense, we kind of talked about it, but I'm watching O'Cyrus Torrence is my key to this game. The Bills lacked that right guard last year. They lacked that guard presence. That's why they struggled. So he's the key to the game. Can he get down, and will he be against Quinnen Williams? Will Quinnen Williams be on Connor McGovern? We'll see how this all plays out and what the Jets defensive scheme will say. But O'Cyrus Torrence has been known to be one of the best anchor prospects to anchor a defensive lineman in years. So we'll see if that's true or if he's going to be utterly outmatched. But I think if he's what we think he is, they call him Cybo. We'll see if Cybo is able to be somebody to watch in this game because he's either going to be pointed out for really good reasons. At the very least, we don't want to notice him. So we'll see what he's able to do. But watch O'Cyrus Torrence from the Bills' right guard spot. It's probably their best pick they've made in years, and we'll see if that's true.
Now, what is the sense in Buffalo going into this game? I think games being played on 9/11, MetLife Stadium. This crowd is going to be off the rails, man. Jet fans have been waiting probably a decade for a game like this. Aaron Rodgers, a talented team, division rival, Monday Night Football, which we never get. So what is the feeling in Buffalo, level of confidence going into this game? Do you think, like, you know what, it's going to be a really close game, or is it going to be like do you feel confident, like, you know what, the Jets are good, but we're better right now?
I mean, the Bills fans, there's two camps. It really is split to those two equations. It's as 50-50 as ever, to where I think there is 50% of Bills fans saying Jets are good. Like, we're going to be lucky to scrape by on a last minute field goal, or keeping it, keeping them down and keeping them off the field themselves. We're going to need a great Josh game, and it's going to be really close and tight, and it could go either way. Then there's a 50% of fans that are like, well, Aaron Rodgers is bad to start the season, and even Hackett himself said it's going to take some time to adjust. And, we're lucky we get him week 1 because that adjustment's not done yet. If I picked when to play Aaron Rodgers, or some Bills fans, I would say week 1, because by week 9, he's going to be the best version of himself. Right. So let's try to get him, let's jump him early. So I think that there's both of those. There really is a really good 50-50 on that side. I would not say a majority either way on that at this point. And I think that there's a growing sentiment of Bills fans that are like, this is a scary game, but we saw what happened to the Chiefs. Ultimately, though, like, look, like, even if it's a close game, the Jets pull it out, this is not the end of the season. We've lost to you before. And we've lost back-to-back games, actually, Jets Vikings. So, they're able to overcome it when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen. So I think that that's the cool confidence that Bills fans have, is that, like, back to what we were talking about earlier, unless Josh is just really bad for 8 weeks or something, Bills can overcome a loss. So they're like, and then their schedule is pretty, conversely to yours, their schedule is pretty weak. So to start with, so Bills fans feel pretty comfortable about if something bad happens, well, we might go to the next time we play at, like, whatever, it's going to be 6-2 or, whatever it might be. Yeah. So they feel pretty comfortable. You're coming to Buffalo, and then this time they'll both be 6-2. So I think that there's a positive optimism from both of those different segments, but ultimately, Bills fans are recognizing, like, maybe I'm buying the hype too. And if they do happen to get one over us on this emotional MetLife, 9/11, all these experiences, then it is what it is. But ultimately, this is when you're going to get the best version of Josh. If you get him again and Josh is poor, then I think we can start to talk about, like, all right, there is something here where Josh can't figure out what's going on here with your personnel and the coach, because they've gotten your coach before, just not last year.
So now, looking just at the AFC East real quick before we wrap this up, it's, to me, it's like the Bills are the class of the East. I mean, I'd like to beat you guys. That's my goal, win the AFC East. To me, the Patriots will be decent, but I think both of us want to sweep them. I think they're like the last place team in the division. What is your take on the Dolphins, man? I think the Dolphins are talented. They got a lot of speed, but they're 1-2 injury away from Mike White starting. So do you consider the Dolphins like a legitimate, like, threat to you guys? Or are you saying, Bills and Jets are up here, Dolphins are next, and then the Patriots are last?
It's so weird because this top heavy Dolphins team, like, they're top heavy. They're really good. And they've given us fits. I mean, they've probably given you fits at times. I didn't break down your 2 games last year. I know it was 1-1, right?
We lost down there, like, the complete shit fest.
Yeah, I kind of remember that game. Yeah. They made the playoffs off of beating you, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think. Yep. Ultimately, we all have to be, whether the Patriots, Bills, or Jets, we all have to take notice of Tua when he's throwing to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and they have a really good running game, even though that they've wanted to delve in themselves, and they've been trying to trade for Jonathan Taylor. That's only because, though, like, how dynamic that player could be in that offense. Yeah. Their running backs are fine. Mostert was really good.
I like Mostert.
Those are really good run defense, and he was really good against them. So good fantasy player for that note, but their starters are elite. They are as good as any of our offenses or our teams. They just don't have any depth, and they run into this issue every year where they end up playing. Like, that's where Sherfield came from. They end up, and Sherfield was their third best receiver, and they lost him even. So look, there's no one behind their starters. Their offensive line's worse than ours for sure. That one I don't even think can be debated. We all talk about what's going on with our offensive line. The Dolphins' offensive line's a mess. Now they're missing Armstead.
That's a big injury.
I got them. I wouldn't be shocked. They're the true wild card in this. I wouldn't be shocked by them still competing for this wild card and being the 2, or I wouldn't be shocked them getting jumped by the Patriots. So we're going to have to see if Tua can stay healthy. I think we all have to take notice, and they're the true wild card in this scenario because they need their starters to stay healthy. We all need our quarterbacks to stay healthy, but I even think the Jets can overcome way more issues than the Dolphins can. So they're a play away from seeing Mike White or not having any receiver. If one of those two receivers goes down, it's I don't think they're dynamic anymore, and that's too much to hang on the hat of one team. And the Patriots are going to Patriot. That defense is good.
Yeah, it is good.
Great corners. They're going to stifle both of us. I know they are at times. Bill Belichick's the best defensively to do it, or one of them. So I think we're going to all struggle. All three of the teams are going to struggle at least one of the two games against the Patriots. So they'll always be there 3-3, probably in the division, probably 8-9, 9-8. And they're going to, if they can take another game, they're not supposed to, that becomes scary. Yeah. But I'm just ultimately never scared of Mac Jones. I'm not scared of him throwing to Juju Smith-Schuster. I thought Jacoby Myers was their best player. He's now in Las Vegas. I mean, they're building their own line, but they have issues there too.
Yep.
I don't see it from them. But if things click for Mac Jones and that defense is as good as advertised with Christian Gonzalez, and maybe they have the defensive rookie of the year this year. So it's going to be interesting to monitor them, Ty, but I probably still have them in fourth. It's can the Jets overcome the Dolphins? You guys have beaten them in the past. I think you can. I think your roster is definitely good enough to definitely be in the playoffs. Just as long as everything gels for you. I think that's the biggest concern. And you're going to need to take one of these Bills games, and you got a great opportunity Monday.
Now, what is your prediction for your season record for this year? I mean, you're looking at like a 13-win season for you guys, 12? Like what range are you thinking?
Yeah, I think mostly Bills prognosticators or people that track the team closely are between 11 and 13. So Some people are at the 11 end, some people are at the 13 end, and the Jets have a lot to do with this, right? If the Bills beat the Jets once or twice, we're probably more on the 13 end. If we don't, if we lose 1, 12, if we lose 2, 11. So I think that's kind of, we're using the Jets because we truly don't know what we're going to see from the New York Jets. Yeah. Like we don't if they're as good as advertised, we're probably more in that 11, 12 number. If they're not, then that's probably where you see the 13 come in for a lot of Bills fans. So I think the Bills split with the Jets 1-1. That's where I have it going. I think that's fair and reasonable. I do see them. I have the Bills sweeping the Dolphins and Patriots. So I have them 5-1 in the division. Nice. The Dolphins take one of those games, that's where things start to clank down the ladder. Or if conversely, if they just sweep all 6, that's obviously where they're going to probably sit up at the six division wins and the 13 total. So I think 12 wins is safe for the Bills, and I think I have that with 1-1 against the Jets, and 5-1 in the division right now.
Okay, I won't ask you for a score prediction because you didn't ask me for one. Because makes this everybody just rides, it gets all crazy. But Monday Night Football, do you think it's going to be a low-scoring close game, or is there a chance to just could somehow break into a shootout?
I was thinking shootout for the longest time, but then I evaluated the rosters. I was looking through some numbers and kind of watched last night and kind of thought about this. The Jets defense is definitely going to be ahead. I think the Bills defense is very good. That's one thing to remember as well. So just because if you have some struggles, you don't score every drive, I would not take that personally.
Yep.
The Bills have done that to everybody. The only team that ever gotten the best of the Bills are some of the highest end quarterbacks in the league. And I personally think I'm now going to fall on the lower scoring game. I really do. I do think it's not going to be that great of an offensive performance. So, I'm always been leaning toward that 20 point mark, kind of like what we saw last night was kind of a replica of what we may see, even though those are two good offenses too. But I think you're going to see in week 1 a kind of a replica of the Thursday Night Football game where, you're probably looking 2017. You're probably looking 21-14. I don't see a fireworks version of scoring. I think both defenses are really good. Jets offense got to get going. The Bills defense will come in ahead too. And the Bills have struggled against the Jets defense. So, unless something breaks here, I do have unless the Jets just come in completely outmatched or the Bills come in and just have no energy, I don't really see that scenario. So I think it's going to, after I've reevaluated this and kind of really looked at the matchups and the rest of the league, I'm thinking it's going to be a low scoring game, Ty. I really think it's going to be in that 20-17 number.
Well, Kevin, first of all, I got to thank you, man, because we were supposed to do this Wednesday night, and I had to completely cancel because my work schedule just sucks right now. But, dude, you're dropping all kinds of, great knowledge, and you're, like I said earlier, you're fair, dude. You're willing to acknowledge certain things on both sides of the ball, good or bad, whatever else. How can everybody find you? Because, dude, this was tremendous.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. It's a great, I try to be as fair as possible with whomever I'm talking about, and even can, if they're playing even the worst team in the league, I try to see, what where could the Bills actually lose a matchup against the Texans? Because there is somewhere that they could be exploited probably. But you can find me. I'm at the Cover One Podcast Network. I'm on the Going Deep Podcast. I have their Tuesday exclusive show at 7 p.m. You were on this week, so check that out on demand. It was a really good edition. We had some fun. And at Kevin Massare, as the handle says here, but I always love coming on these things because I think like it's really good. I love to hear from other fans. It's really good to hear from the team, someone that follows the team closely, because you can actually get a real insight, like where the Bills have issues. And actually, like, I think you'll see a good Bills offensive line. So I wanted to make sure I said that on your show because they really did dump a ton of money and assets into it this season, but they have struggled against the Jets defensively. And I needed to be fair to say, like, they need these Bills to win one. These Bills receivers, Gabe Davis has to come up big, because if he can't and he cannot figure out sauce, it's going to be challenging. The Bills are going to have to get creative.
No, man, I tell you, dude, I love talking football with you, but your insight, like you back up your information with stats. You're not like throwing things in the wind, like, oh, I think this, like, no, some hot take stuff. Like, no, here's my point, but here's why too. And here's my experience on it. So, dude, this was tremendous. And then what the fun thing about this, we can talk now. I can actually come back at you, man, where it's like the last couple of years going on your show, dude, I was like, you guys are asking me for score predictions. Like, well, we got Zach Wilson. We got this. We got Mike White's hurt. We got this. Like, I had to go. I was eating like humble pie, like every show we did. Now we can have some fun, man. So we do this like later on in the season. You know, hopefully both teams stay healthy. We can stay in the same boat. We're gonna have a lot of fun talking about these teams.
I think so. I'm really looking forward. I just cop out, but I'm really looking forward to the next show, because then we'll have some real data. Yeah. Right now, I am just guessing on what we'll see from the Jets side, because I really don't. They could come in and dominate, and we'll have our hands full for at least a couple years, or it could go a different way, and maybe he's going to take some time to warm up. So, truthfully, the next show is going to be fun, because we'll have some records, we'll have some data, we'll have some injuries, we'll have some things that we can see and actually talk about, like last matchup, this and that. So next time, and they play relatively early on in the season again, like not too late. I think early November. So I'm looking forward to that. And hey, it's happened 2 years in a row for the Bills. Could it be a third with a third final team in a third matchup? They did it, back to back with Miami and New England. I think there's odds. The odds are in the favor of we'll see a third matchup this year. So maybe we'll see a third show for the first time ever, or first time I've been.
That would be awesome. Well, dude, first of all, enjoy the game. So Monday night, what do you do for the game, man? Do you stay home and watch it? Do you go out with friends? Or how do you handle a game?
I'm one of those, like, in my TV, on myself, by myself, watch this game. I don't get in the hoopla. I'll watch some pregame stuff, but not much. And I'll dial in and I'll try to, watch the game and come on and come up with my final predictions in terms of what I saw. But ultimately, I'm not a bar guy in terms of watch my team play. I'll watch how the other teams play. But I will be a guy in my cave watching it live. And usually I'm more upset at how bad the Bills are playing, even if they're winning, than I am with the opponent, being mad at the opponent.
Yep. I'm the same way, man. Like, going to the bar is fun, but I like to watch it, like my own little environment, I can hear it, I can see it, I can analyze, I can yell, I can scream, I do whatever I want, and not be distracted by whether the bartender, your friends, a conversation.
Exactly.
I just want focus, man. Like, I don't want
the hoopla of the other fans too. Like, so say I'm with Bills fans and they're just screaming out outlandish things that don't make any sense. Yep. Garrett Wilson's garbage or some trash thing I don't want. Like, that's just not productive. Yep. That does not help me. Or Von Miller stinks or some. It just. Yep. I can't do it.
So thank you again, man. Make sure you guys follow him. I'll post all your links underneath the description here and everything else. And dude, enjoy the game. Best of luck to you guys, man. The one really cool thing about Bills fans, they've been really, really respectful of our channel. I've been to Buffalo 3 times now to games. We've always had a great time. So it's like a mutual respect thing. It's not like animosity. Like, I hate the Patriots and their fans. You guys, man, nothing but respect to you guys.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on. I agree. The Dolphin fans have been brutal. They were brutal last year. So it's good. It's a good change. Hopefully we keep them down, but love coming on here. Going to enjoy this game so much, you two. And once again, welcome to the big time, man. You guys are there. Like, this is a big time game.
Please.
We'll see what we see.
Thank you again. Thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the game. And then next Bills Jets game, we're going to do this again.
Yeah, we'll see you soon, man. Thanks for having me on.
Later, dude. All right.